let's get something straight. Are you a boy or a girl?
Boy.
100%.
Absolutely.
12-year-old Evan is like many boys in Dallas, Texas. He rides scooters and roughhouses with his friends.
Woo!
But unlike most boys, he is biologically a girl.
What age did you begin to realize that you were a boy?
Well, the story's a little odd. My mom, she's giving me a bath, 2 years old. She says something like, "Oh, you're such a pretty girl." And I say, "No, I'm a boy."
We had like a little, conversation about what being a girl was and being a boy, and we moved on. I didn't think about it again. I didn't think about it again until about a year later, he brought it up again.
Evan has been diagnosed with gender dysphoria, a condition where one's emotional and psychological identity is the opposite of one's biological sex.
It's a new record.
Doctors believe thousands of people have gender dysphoria, but it often isn't recognized or treated, especially in children.
One day I'm in the bathroom and Evan runs in and he's like, "Mom, move over, move over." And I'm sitting on the toilet running the tub for my children. I'm getting it ready. And he comes in, he's like, you gotta move. And I said, just go, sit down behind me. He goes, "I don't sit to pee, I stand up when I pee." And he says, "Mom, I'm a boy. Boys pee standing up." But it was then that I started calling my friends. I think I got something going on.
Like many transgender children, Evan suffered from depression, even at times felt suicidal. The feeling of being trapped in the wrong body and no one understanding was almost too much to bear.
We're trying to pigeonhole him into tomboy, and it's not working. And we get him this bike, and we are a family of 4, 1 income, and we buy him this like $100 bike from, whatever sports store, and he doesn't want it. He says, "I want the bike." I said, "Why don't you ride the bike?" He says, "It's a girl bike." I said, "It's a great bike. I don't want it. It's a girl bike." He starts yelling at me, and he's like, "You never listen to me. You never hear what I'm telling you. I'm always telling you things, and you're never listening." He's screaming. And of course, we're in our driveway.
I said I don't want the bike. It was too girly. I didn't want it because it was pink with flames on it. And so I was like, "Give it to Zane or Ike." And she's like, "But those are boys. You're a girl." So I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm a boy."
And it was like, woof, I get it. He's been saying it for 5 years in English, but now I get it. Because I kept trying to make him not be a boy.
And she's like, "Oh, so you mean you're a boy?" And like that switch flipped in her head because she was never like, "Oh, you can't be trans."
And I said, "I'm sorry. I get it." Sorry. So I said, "What if we go get your hair cut and buy you some new clothes?" And he said, "Good." So then he transitioned. That's when we started the transition. I'm sorry, I'm so emotional about this.
The hair was cut, the clothes changed, and Mom and Dad began using the male pronoun, and Evie became Evan.
I mean, he was, prior to that moment, he was sullen, hostile. But the truth is, then he became a much easier kid to raise. And everything started to soften for Evan when we started the transition for him.
The change in Evan's behavior and emotional state was dramatic. But while his family came around, the kids at school were a different story.
There's no physical violence, but there was huge mental. They hurt my feelings, not just my feelings. They tried so hard to make me break down or do something and to make me lose control. People would always make fun of me. Not make fun of me, but they'd tease me. But I'd come home from school, my mom's like, "So how's school today?" I'd be like, "Oh, it's great."
But it wasn't great.
It wasn't great. It was awful. I'd sit alone. I'd eat alone. I had no one to talk to. No one wanted to be my partner. It hurt very much.
And school wouldn't be his only challenge. Another transition was fast approaching, one Evan and his parents deeply feared: the onset of puberty. Because Evan is biologically female, puberty would mean he'd soon be looking more and more feminine every day.
I was desperate. That's a perfect word for it. I felt panicked. Evan had indicated that self-mutilation was absolutely on the list of possibilities should, he develop breasts and stuff like that. He was like, I'm cutting those off. And I was like, no, you're not going to cut them off. Like, I better do something because in my head I thought, breasts are coming, Evan, so I don't know what to tell you. And so I started looking like what to do with your kid.
How many doctors did you call?
I know that I called over 100.
Over 100?
Over 100 doctors. I'm not exaggerating when I'm telling you we called other states, we called all the different cities in Texas. We couldn't find anyone.
At the time, gender dysphoria was rarely taught in medical school. And while there are doctors for transgender adults, treating children was almost unheard of. But one doctor hesitantly agreed to see Evan. Dr. Ximena Lopez is a pediatric endocrinologist at Children's Medical Center in Dallas. When she got that frantic phone call, she had no idea what was to come.
Can you tell me about your first patient?
He was 9 and had started to develop breasts. And he was saying he wanted to die. At that time, I didn't have a lot of experience, but I was willing to learn, and it was something very new. Hello. Hi. How are you?
Convinced that what Evan was feeling was not a phase, Dr. Lopez gathered research from a program called the Dutch Protocol, a medical project in the Netherlands that used drugs to delay puberty for transgender children until they were old enough to decide their sex.
They had just published their research data that showed that once these 70 patients that had gone through this protocol, when they were in their early 20s, their psychological well-being and their quality of life was similar or better than that of the general Dutch population.
It's revealing.
Dr. Lopez assembled a team at the Children's Hospital to help Evan with his transition. Today, it's known as the Genesis Program, designed for transgender children and their families. The clinic is one of only a handful in the country. After a 6-month mental health evaluation, doctors can prescribe drugs to delay the onset of puberty.
How's your implant doing?
It's doing good. It's better. I'm not picking at it.
Puberty itself is distressing, and that's when the risk of depression, anxiety, and suicide just rises through the roof, because all their lives they were expecting that their body was going to be something different, and when you're a child you magically think that maybe one morning you'll wake up and you're the gender you feel you are, and suddenly when you start puberty you realize it's not only not happening, but it's going in the other way. Gender issues or...
Well, this isn't just
Not all doctors are comfortable using puberty blockers, and even Dr. Lopez admits not enough rigorous research has been done on its long-term effects. Still, she says, the alternative can be deadly. Over 40% of transgender adults have attempted suicide at some point in their lives, more than 10 times the national average. And the rates are even higher among transgender youth.
I think when these parents come to see us, they're desperate. And they've tried everything any parent would try, any good parent. Love, religion, if it's there, everything. And when your child wants to die and not live anymore, that's what changes parents.